Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here to do a review today of the new Samyang/Rokinon 135mm f2 lens. This is the newest prime lens to come from the Korean manufacturer, and it's an intriguing lens on a variety of levels. First of all, we're going to take a closer look at the build quality here. It is a manual focus only prime, and obviously a very popular focal length. And so, as you can see, when compared with Canon's own 135mm lens, they are fairly similar in overall design and overall in build. They're really quite similar. This is engineered plastics, and this is also engineered plastics. It has a metal mount, and as I've detailed in other Rokinon or Samyang reviews, there is no electronic data that is transmitted. You'll see there's no chip here at all, and so that data is not going to be communicated on to the camera. And so you're going to have to guess later at your aperture settings, and it won't distinguish itself with EXIF data at all. As we go up here, you'll see that there is a manual aperture ring between f2 and f22. As you see, as we stop down, the aperture stays nicely round throughout. Most of it, we're at f8 already and still have a pretty nice looking round aperture, and down to f22. There are 9 aperture blades, and they are fairly rounded, which allows you to have a nicely round aperture. And this lens actually produces really beautiful bokeh, and we'll examine that more as we look at the image quality. It does have a bit of a hyperfocal distance markings here, and above that, of course, we have our actual focus ring. The focus ring is nice and wide. It has kind of a rubberized, ribbed feeling here, and so no problems there. I have found that although this is loosened up some, in this particular copy, I find that the actual weight or friction in moving is a little bit heavy. The damping is a little heavy, and I find that right along in this zone right here, that would be between about 10 and 15 feet, there feels to be a little bit of internal friction there. And so I would imagine that is probably copy specific, but I would take a look at that if you purchase this lens. Make sure that your copy, that the focus ring is operating smoothly throughout. I do imagine that with more use, this is a new copy that's only been used for about 150 shots, that with more use it will probably loosen up a bit more. It does have a nice long focus throw. Our full focus throw is pretty close to 90 degrees there, and most importantly, there is a lot of space here from that critical distance of about 5 feet on to infinity. We have a good long amount of play there. There is nice coatings on the lens. There's a 77mm front filter. One other thing is that it has a standard, not a pedal, but just a standard looking lens hood that is included. With the lens hood on, you will find, compared to the Canon, this is one of my only beasts with the Canon 135, is that its lens hood flares a whole lot, and so it's not great for storage. As you can see, it takes up a lot of extra space in the bag. It's also probably a bit larger than what it needs to be, so you'll find that the Canon, although the Rokinon or the Samyang lens is marginally longer without the hood, when the hood is mounted, the overall dimensions of the Samyang are quite a bit smaller than that of the Canon lens. Comes at $549 as an introductory price. That's about half what the cost of the Canon version is. The Nikon version comes in $100 and so more above that, and so it's at a competitive price point, and in that way I think it's better positioned than what their new 50mm lens is. We just want to take a look at the image quality. I think that seeing will be believing in this case. So we're going to run through a series of images here quickly and just pouring out a few things. Now, this image I don't share so much for the artistic value, but it was one of the early shots that began to show me how wow this lens was. This is of course a manual focus lens, but when you nail focus, look at the amount of detail and resolution that is in that image. That is an amazing amount of information there, and so that's when I started to get impressed. Now here I wanted to just highlight the fact that in this shot, this is a wide open shot, and so it gives you an idea of how much the contrast of the image helps there to be that kind of three-dimensional effect here. This is another early image that wowed me a lot. Number one, this is beautiful, creamy bokeh rendering here. And then, of course, my focal point along the edge of this leftover leaf on a beech tree. I mean, to see those fine hairs there, I was very impressed just by the overall look of the image. Just great bokeh. This is another one that wowed me early on from a little bit of ways, but when I zoomed into this image and I saw the kind of detail that was here, I was really blown away. I mean, that is impressively sharp and just beautiful. In this image, I wanted to see what happened if I put the sun into the frame, and so while you'll see that in this particular image, there are a few images where I did see some ghosting artifacts. There is no ghosting here. There is a bit of a flare pattern. Here I find that it has a very artistic effect. It's not uncommon with a 135mm wide aperture lens like this. My Canon does the same thing to introduce a bit of flare effect. And so the flare here I actually find is very artistic. Your actual resolution and contrast, though, is still good on the subject, and so that is, I think, a good result. In some cases, though, you can introduce a few ghosting artifacts depending upon where the sun is positioned in the frame. This is an image from a portrait series that I did with the lens, and once again you see that great three-dimensional type resolution here, and of course our really nice detail on our subject, and of course very beautiful bokeh rendering from the lens. If you can manage to nail focus, it's great for this kind of shot. That's something to me that's very unique about 135mm f2 lenses, is that ability to really be able to step back a good ways from your subject. I was probably around 35 to 40 feet when shooting the shot, but to still have that great kind of three-dimensional cutout effect with a great depth in bokeh, and so I really love this particular focal length for portraiture, although as I point out in my review, I find that manually focusing this lens wide open at this kind of working range is rather difficult, but in this case I managed to pull it off. Another thing that you can easily do with a manual focus lens, it's a little more challenging to do with a typical autofocus lens, is to really completely choose where you want to focus. In this case, I wanted the subject to be completely out of focus and just focus on some of the snowflakes here, and so you see how easy that was to achieve in just a moment by doing that. Here's another one from that series, and so let's just look down towards the more edge of the frame. That's not really where our focus is, but you'll see that that detail stands out there nicely, and this image is really, it's not focused very well at all, but you see how that it still has a very acceptable result when you're viewing it at a typical viewing resolution. Here's another I did a little portrait series with this young lady, and again, your detail here is really great. There's probably more detail there than what she would necessarily like, but it shows, and also in our out of focus region here, it's just a really nice portrait length and portrait lens. Here's a more of a candid type shot, but you'll see, number one, that this is just ambient lighting. Really nice looking just overall drawing of the image itself. It's really nice looking, and then if you actually zoom in, those are some exquisite details that are there, and this is another wide open shot there. I wanted to share this one just to show a little bit of a practical way how that the minimum focus of this lens pays off. You can get in really close with this lens, and this is not cropped at all. This is how tightly I could frame of this cat, and so obviously great detail. Depth of field here is razor thin at that kind of focal length, and then also the working distance there. But you see, for headshots, this lens allows you to really get in and really get as close as what you would want to, and if you add on extension tubes, of course, it will become a very suitable macro lens as well, and because it's already got some great magnification to start with. Here's another portrait shot. I just again wanted to show the nicely diffused background. Here's another. This is more just of candid, and this was actually a JPEG, and so you'll see a bit of difference in that there's a little more of contrast and color boost in the image compared to my raw files, which are a little more flat. And so this is out of camera, but you'll see here that the amount of detail here is just amazing. And so if you're a JPEG shooter, you can rejoice, because that is some outstanding resolution right there. Here's another shot just to kind of show off bokeh. This time of year, there are no flowers around here. And this lens is sharp enough that if you zoom into this lens or this image, you can tell that this is very much a fake flower. And again, this is a wide open shot, great detail, great resolution there, but just the overall look of the image, I really think that this lens has wonderful contrast, micro contrast to it. It's a really nice portrait lens, again, as long as you can get it focused. Here's another image just to show the nice bokeh. What I was actually using for bokeh highlights was not far behind this, probably less than 4 feet, and so it shows kind of that closer distance, still how very nicely diffused. And then of course, if you look here, the amount of resolution and detail there is amazing. This lens, and that's true, as we go right up towards the corner of the frame. We'll see that more in just a moment. But just really nice bokeh. It's optically, this is one of the best lenses that I've reviewed. Here's another wide open shot just to show it in a different kind of setting. Narrow depth of field, really nice rendering at that kind of medium distance. And then of course, where we're focused, great detail, very nice. This shot I wanted to share just to show that with a little foresight, you can actually nail action shots manually focused. And this particular shot, I pre-focused to where I wanted to be. And while the focus is obviously not perfect, I think I remember this being about f2.8. This is a great looking shot with great timing on this dog as it was leaping into this water that was still full of ice. But it shows that you can use lens for action if you just put a little foresight into it. Now finally, I'm going to do a comparison of between an image, and this was shot in a controlled setting from my 135mm f2L versus this lens. This was shot on a tripod, all of the effects to try to get the best result here. But here I just wanted to give you a look at some of these things. First of all, you'll see that the Canon 135 frames a little bit closer. And I would say at that kind of working distance, this was at about 5.5 to 6 feet. I would say that there's probably some focus breathing from the Samyang, and it probably is a truer 135, somewhere closer to infinity than this range. These are both shot wide open f2, and our focal point was actually right here on this in Canada. Okay, so I want you to note, number one, the amazing difference between the contrast of the Samyang, that's on this side, compared to the Canon. In the Canon, the text here has a purple look due to some chromatic aberration and kind of a lack of kind of micro contrast. But you'll see here how inky black the text looks. And then as you just kind of look here, look at the difference in the texture rendering in this area. It really is staggering how different that is. The challenge is despite the optical goodness that this lens has, and it really has optics really just about as good as what I've seen. It's probably not quite as good as the Zeiss APO Sonar 135mm lens that I reviewed last year, but for the price point, its optics are incredible, and it certainly is able to handily beat the Canon 135L lens. But the challenge, of course, is that with the Canon 135L lens, I'm able to get the majority of my shots in focus. And I can't say the same for this. At the kind of working distances that I like to use a 135mm lens for portraiture, and I like to shoot environmental portraits that are full body portraits and have that nice narrow depth of field, it's a challenge to get this lens properly in focus at that kind of working distance, which is, usually probably 30 to 40 feet. And so it's very hard to visually confirm, even if you have an EGS focus screen installed, as I do in this Canon 6D body. And so that makes this lens a bit of a challenge. If you have an opportunity to shoot very slowly and deliberately, perhaps in your portrait work, or if you tend to shoot more off of a tripod, this lens is certainly worth the investment because it produces some stunning results. But if you are someone that is going to need to be shooting at a little more rapid pace, I have a hard time recommending this lens despite its amazing optics. It's manual everything, there's no focus confirm, obviously no autofocus of any kind. And so for many photographers, I think they're going to find some challenges with that. If that's something that you are able to overcome, you're an experienced manual focus shooter, or you have a more deliberate style that enables you for that, this is a lens you will certainly enjoy and will produce some stunning images. I think its optics certainly justify its price, but I think that for many photographers, even having a lens that's slightly more inferior optically but is in focus all the time may be the choice they end up going with. My name is Dustin Abbott. Thanks for watching today. And if you'll look down below, there's a linkage to a full written review and then also an image gallery full of some of the great images I've been able to capture during the review period with this lens. Have a great day. If you haven't already, please subscribe.